The call about my grandfather passing came on a Tuesday. We had always been close, but the news that he had left me his commercial warehouse property still came as a shock. At 67, he had seemed invincible, still working every day at the business he built from nothing. The lawyer explained that the property was completely paid off and worth well over $700,000 in the current market. I had fond memories of visiting him there as a child, watching in awe as he managed inventory and negotiated with suppliers, a business titan in my young eyes. The warehouse sat at the edge of Lakeside Heights, one of those upscale planned communities where houses started at $500,000. The contrast was stark. My grandfather's industrial building with its weathered brick exterior, bordered perfectly manicured lawns and luxury homes just across the street. The property consisted of a 10,000 square foot warehouse with offices in the front and a large paved lot in the back that wrapped around the side of the building. After finalizing the paperwork and receiving the keys, I spent several days considering my options. I could sell the property immediately and walk away with a substantial sum, but something about continuing what my grandfather started appealed to me. I had been working remotely as a logistics coordinator for years. Perhaps I could start my own distribution business using this space as a hub. The possibilities seemed endless and exciting. 3 weeks after the funeral, I drove out to properly assess the building. The front offices needed updating but were in good condition overall. Sunlight streamed through dusty windows as I walked through the cavernous storage area, my footsteps echoing off the concrete floors. The property felt like a bridge to my past. My grandfather had worked his entire life to own this place outright. As I turned the corner to inspect the back lot, my steps slowed involuntarily. The asphalt was filled with gleaming vehicles, luxury sedans, SUVs, and sports cars. I counted at least 20 of them, neatly arranged in rows. None of them had business there as far as I knew. My grandfather never mentioned renting parking spaces, and the lawyer had said nothing about any agreements. I approached a middle-aged woman unlocking the door of a white Mercedes. She wore tennis whites and had that polished look of someone who spends significant money maintaining their appearance. "Excuse me," I said. "May I ask why your car is parked here?" She turned and assessed me with cool detachment, her eyes moving from my casual clothes to my questioning expression. Her response dripped with annoyed indifference. "We have permission," she stated dismissively, as if speaking to service staff. "The HOA arranged it years ago. Who are you?" "I am the new owner of this property," I replied, my confusion growing by the second. "My grandfather passed away and left it to me." "Well, then you should know about the arrangement," she said with a wave of her hand as she slid into her luxury car. "Check with Lakeside Heights HOA if you have questions. We have been parking here for years." As she drove away, I stood motionless in disbelief. Strangers had been treating my private property as their personal parking area, apparently sanctioned by a homeowners association I had never spoken to. Nothing in the inheritance paperwork mentioned any parking agreement or easement. My property was being used without my knowledge or consent, and somehow these people felt entitled to it. I took out my phone and began photographing the vehicles and license plates. My grandfather had been many things, but a pushover was not one of them. Something about this situation did not add up, and I intended to get answers. The next morning, I started researching Lakeside Heights Homeowners Association. Their website featured pristine images of their community, immaculate streets lined with large houses, a community pool that resembled a resort, and smiling families enjoying exclusive amenities. The About Us section boasted of their commitment to maintaining property values and community standards. What caught my attention, however, were news articles about disputed land usage with neighboring properties. Apparently, Lakeside Heights HOA had a history of aggressively expanding their reach. 3 years ago, they had attempted to force a corner grocery store to comply with their aesthetic standards despite the store not being part of their jurisdiction. Another article detailed a dispute with a local farmer over water rights. The pattern was clear. This was an organization accustomed to throwing its weight around. I located their office address and drove there without an appointment. The HOA headquarters occupied a small but elegant building near the community entrance. Inside, expensive landscape paintings adorned the walls, and the marble flooring echoed with each step I took. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled hair, looked up from her computer. "I need to speak with whoever is in charge of the HOA," I stated firmly. "Do you have an appointment with Ms. Hartwell?" she asked, her eyes returning to her screen. "No, but this is urgent. It concerns unauthorized use of my private property." After several phone calls and 40 minutes of waiting in an uncomfortable chair, I was finally led to the office of Diane Hartwell, HOA president. Her office window overlooked precisely manicured gardens. She remained seated as I entered, finishing an email before acknowledging my presence. "How can I help you today?" she asked, her smile professional but cold. I explained the situation: inheriting the warehouse, discovering numerous cars parked there, and learning that the HOA supposedly had some arrangement. "Ah yes, the Miller property," she said, recognizing my grandfather's name. "Your grandfather understood community cooperation." Her manicured nails tapped rhythmically against her mahogany desk. "We have had an arrangement dating back 15 years. I would like to see the documentation for this arrangement," I requested. Her expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "It was more of a gentleman's agreement between your grandfather and the previous board president. Carlton Miller was a reasonable man who understood the benefits of maintaining good relations with our community. So there is no formal agreement, no contract, lease, or written permission," I pressed. "Not everything needs to be formalized on paper when you have mutual respect and understanding," she replied smoothly. "Our residents benefit from additional parking, and your grandfather appreciated having our security patrols keep an eye on his property." "I never saw any security patrols mentioned in any paperwork," I countered, "and my grandfather never discussed this with me or apparently with my lawyer." Ms. Hartwell's smile disappeared completely. "Mr. Miller, is it? Let me be direct. This arrangement has worked well for all parties for over a decade. Disrupting it would be unfortunate." "How so?" I asked. Her voice dropped to a dangerous octave. "You really do not want to make enemies here. We have significant influence over property values and business permits in this area. A warehouse suddenly experiencing code violations or access issues would be most unfortunate for a new business owner." The threat hung between us, unspoken but unmistakable. She was suggesting that the HOA would actively work against me if I did not allow them to continue using my property without compensation or formal agreement. "Thank you for your time," I said, standing up. "I will be reviewing my options." "Do consider the bigger picture," she called after me as I left. "Being part of the community is always preferable to being an outsider." Walking back to my car, I felt a mixture of anger and disbelief. Not only was my property being used without permission, but I was also being threatened when questioning it. Whatever gentleman's agreement may or may not have existed died with my grandfather. I had no intention of allowing this exploitation to continue. The following week, I dedicated myself to uncovering the full scope of what was happening. Early mornings found me parked across from my warehouse, camera in hand, documenting every vehicle entering and leaving the property. Rain pelted against my windshield during one such stakeout, each drop amplifying my frustration as I photographed license plate after license plate. On the third day, as I sat in my car, the owner of the neighboring auto parts store approached with 2 cups of coffee. Marco, a man in his 50s with grease-stained hands and honest eyes, tapped on my window. "Thought you could use this," he said, offering me a steaming cup when I rolled down the window. "You have been out here every morning this week." I thanked him and explained my situation. His knowing nod told me he understood completely. "They did the same thing to the previous businesses on this strip," he confided, leaning against my car. "Strong-armed tactics, implied threats. Most people just give in. Some of us have been waiting for someone to stand up to them." Marco shared how the HOA had gradually extended its influence beyond its legal boundaries. They had successfully pressured the last 3 business owners on our street to comply with their demands for aesthetic changes, signage restrictions, and even limited operating hours. Armed with this information, I scheduled a consultation with a property attorney. Jennifer Adams specialized in commercial real estate disputes and had a reputation for taking on powerful local interests. Her office walls displayed framed newspaper articles about similar cases she had won. "They have zero legal standing," she confirmed after reviewing the property deeds and tax records. "Your grandfather owned that land outright, including the parking area. Without a written agreement, easement, or lease, they are trespassing. End of story." She pulled up county maps on her computer screen, pointing to the precise boundaries of my property. "Every inch of this belongs to you. They cannot simply decide to use it because it is convenient." My investigation took an unexpected turn when I discovered the HOA newsletter online. Their April issue contained a section titled Member Benefits that advertised exclusive premium parking arrangements at just $75 monthly per vehicle. A separate membership tier called Platinum included guaranteed parking spots for $125 monthly. I stared at the screen in disbelief. They were not just using my property without permission. They were actively profiting from it, collecting thousands of dollars each month from residents. The final piece of evidence came from my grandfather's old filing cabinet. In a folder labeled HOA, I found 3 separate letters dated over the past decade. In each one, my grandfather explicitly denied their requests for a formal parking agreement. The most recent letter, written just 6 months before his passing, had been particularly firm. "As stated in my previous correspondence, I have no interest in formalizing any parking arrangement with Lakeside Heights HOA. Any vehicles found on my property are there without my consent. This constitutes my final response on this matter." Marco confirmed what the evidence was telling me. Your grandfather was old-school stubborn. He refused to be bullied. But after his health started failing last year, they just started parking there anyway. What was he going to do about it from his hospital bed? The picture was becoming crystal clear. The HOA had not only ignored my grandfather's explicit refusals, but had opportunistically taken advantage of his declining health to encroach on his property. Now they were profiting from land they did not own while threatening me when I questioned their authority. That night, as I spread all the evidence across my kitchen table, I made a decision. This was not just about parking spaces. This was about right and wrong, about standing up to bullies who weaponized their influence against those they perceived as weaker. I would reclaim what was rightfully mine. I approached the reclamation of my property with the same methodical precision my grandfather had applied to his business. This would not be an emotional reaction, but a carefully orchestrated plan backed by law and documentation. My dining room transformed into command central, zoning maps taped to walls, municipal codes highlighted in neon colors, and a calendar marking the strategic countdown. My first step was researching all relevant local laws about private property, towing regulations, and required notices. The county website provided clear guidelines. Property owners must post visible signage warning about unauthorized parking and potential consequences. These signs needed to include specific language about towing, the name and contact information of the towing company, and the address where vehicles would be taken. I spent hours at the county clerk's office reviewing ordinances and obtaining the proper permits. The clerk, a woman with graying hair and decades of experience, reviewed my paperwork carefully. "Everything is in order," she confirmed, stamping each form with bureaucratic precision. "As the property owner, you have every right to remove unauthorized vehicles as long as proper notice is given." Next came the signage. I contracted with a local sign company to create large, professionally made notices that met all legal requirements. The owner arrived 2 days later to install them at every entrance to my property. "Private property, unauthorized vehicles will be TOWED onerous expense," they proclaimed in bold red letters against a white background. Below this warning were the details of the towing company, an impound lot address. Legal requirements specified the signs needed to be clearly visible day and night, so we added reflective coating and positioned them under existing light fixtures. Finding the right towing company proved crucial. I needed professionals who understood the legal implications and could handle what would likely be a contentious mass towing operation. After interviewing 3 companies, I selected Reliable Towing, a firm with 20 years of experience and a solid reputation. The owner, Dave Williams, whistled when I explained the situation during our meeting at his office. 20+ vehicles. We will need extra trucks, he noted, making calculations on his notepad. This is not a small operation you are planning. We worked out the logistics, how many trucks would be needed, the optimal time for the operation, and the sequence of vehicle removal to maximize efficiency. His expertise was invaluable in ensuring the process would be both legal and efficient. "We will need a deposit," Dave explained, sliding the paperwork across his desk. The invoice required a substantial $3,000 down payment, but it represented freedom from exploitation. I wrote the check without hesitation. The most delicate part of my plan involved formal notification to the HOA. My attorney drafted a comprehensive certified letter outlining my position. This letter serves as formal notice that the unauthorized use of the property at 1458 Industrial Parkway, parcel 4582,003, must cease immediately. As the legal owner, I have not granted permission for parking or any other usage of this private property. Any vehicles found on the premises after date 7 days from receipt will be considered trespassing and will be removed at the owner's expense. The letter continued by outlining every legal statute supporting my position, the documented evidence of their unauthorized profit scheme, and referenced the previous correspondence from my grandfather explicitly denying permission. It concluded with a warning that appropriate signage had been installed and that towing would commence without further notice after the grace period. My attorney reviewed the final draft. "This covers all our legal bases," she confirmed. "They cannot claim they were not properly notified." I made 3 copies, one for certified mail to the HOA office, one for personal delivery and one for my records. As I stood at the post office counter watching the clerk process the certified letter, I felt both anxiety and resolve. My hand shook slightly as I slid the receipt into my wallet. There was no turning back now. The final phase of my plan involved documentation. I purchased security cameras and had them installed around the property, ensuring they captured all parking areas. These would provide evidence of continued trespassing, despite clear notices and formal warnings. My attorney suggested one additional precaution: contacting the local police department to inform them of the situation. This would prevent the HOA from claiming theft or illegal towing when the operation began. The police sergeant listened to my explanation and reviewed my documentation. As long as you follow the proper procedures and have the appropriate signage, you are within your rights, he confirmed. If anyone calls to complain, we will explain that this is a civil matter between a property owner and trespassers. With every element in place, all that remained was to wait out the notice period and observe the HOA's response. The countdown had begun. The day after sending the certified letter, I positioned myself in the small office at the front of my warehouse. Through the window, I had a clear view of the HOA headquarters across the street. The postal carrier arrived at precisely 10:15 a.m. 20 minutes later, I watched as Ms. Hartwell and 3 board members gathered in the parking lot, huddle forming around the opened envelope. Even from this distance, their body language told the story. Ms. Hartwell gestured emphatically, her face visibly reddening as she read through the documents. One of the men snatched the papers, scanning them before shaking his head in obvious disbelief. Their discussion grew animated, with frequent pointing toward my warehouse. The final act of their impromptu meeting spoke volumes. Ms. Hartwell crumpled the papers and tossed them dramatically into a trash can, making sure the gesture was visible from my vantage point. The message was clear: my notice would be ignored. True to form, the next morning brought no change in behavior. Despite the prominent warning signs, luxury vehicles continued arriving each morning, their owners deliberately ignoring the bright red notices. I began placing printed warnings directly on windshields, bright orange paper stating, "Notice: this vehicle is parked illegally on private property and will be towed at owner's expense." These notices were removed or simply discarded on the ground. One woman even made a show of crumpling the paper and throwing it toward my security camera before sauntering away. By the 3rd day of the warning period, the intimidation tactics began. As I exited my warehouse that afternoon, a group of 5 residents formed a semicircle around me, blocking my path to my car. "My husband is on the city council," one woman hissed, invading my personal space. Her designer sunglasses reflected my startled expression. "You cannot do this to us." Another resident, a tall man in golf attire, stepped uncomfortably close. "We have always parked here. You are destroying property values and community relations. Do you have any idea how much our homes are worth?" Their sense of entitlement was palpable, radiating off them like heat. None acknowledged they were trespassing, or that they had been paying their HOA for the privilege of using property that the HOA did not own. "The signs are clear," I replied calmly. "This is private property. The grace period ends in 4 days. "We will see about that," the man ordered, pulling out his phone as they finally allowed me to pass. The legal intimidation began the following morning. A courier delivered a cease and desist letter from the HOA's attorney, claiming established easement rights through historical usage, and threatening legal action if I interfered with their members' parking. 2 more legal letters arrived over the next 2 days, each more threatening than the last. I forwarded each document to my attorney, who responded with professional disdain. "Pure intimidation with zero legal foundation," she assured me during our phone consultation. "They are counting on you backing down because most people do." The most concerning escalation came when I arrived one morning to find someone had attempted to remove one of my warning signs. The metal post was bent, though the sign itself remained legible. I documented the vandalism with photographs and filed a police report, creating an official record of the HOA's response to lawful notices. Ms. Hartwell herself made an appearance on the 6th day of the warning period. I watched through my office window as her luxury sedan pulled alongside my property. She remained in her vehicle, speaking animatedly on her phone while staring directly at my building. After 15 minutes, she drove away without exiting her car, a drive-by intimidation attempt. That evening, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. It was a local news reporter asking for comment on the parking dispute causing community concern. Clearly, the HOA was attempting to control the narrative by portraying me as unreasonable. "I am simply exercising my rights as a property owner," I told the reporter calmly. "My attorney can provide you with all relevant documentation showing that this is private property being used without permission or compensation." As the 7-day warning period neared its end, not a single vehicle had stopped parking on my property. If anything, there seemed to be more cars than usual, a deliberate show of defiance. The HOA clearly believed their collective influence would force me to back down. That night I confirmed the final arrangements with the towing company. "We will be there at 5:00 a.m., Dave assured me. "My team knows exactly what to do." I walked through my warehouse one last time before leaving, looking out at the luxury vehicles gleaming under the security lights. By this time tomorrow, everything would change. After years of exploitation and weeks of intimidation, justice was about to be served. I barely slept that night, my mind cycling through every detail of the plan, checking for oversights or vulnerabilities. The alarm buzzed at 4:00 a.m., though I had been awake for hours already. I showered and dressed carefully, professional attire that projected authority and legitimacy. This day would likely involve confrontations, possibly even police involvement. Appearance mattered. Dawn was just a suggestion on the horizon when I arrived at the warehouse. Morning fog shrouded the building in ethereal quiet, transforming the ordinary industrial structure into something almost mystical. The parking lot held 27 vehicles, a record number. Word of my warning had apparently motivated even more residents to assert their perceived right to my property. At precisely 5:00 a.m., 5 tow trucks turned onto my street, their yellow warning lights pulsing through the mist like heartbeats. They parked in formation at the curb, engines idling quietly. Dave, the towing company owner, approached me with clipboard in hand. "All the paperwork is in order," he confirmed. "My team knows the protocol. We document every vehicle before hooking up, photograph all 4 sides plus the license plate and record the VIN number. Everything by the book." I surveyed the scene one final time. The illegally parked vehicles, the clearly posted warning signs that had been ignored, the tow trucks waiting to enforce my property rights. With a deep breath, I gave Dave a solemn nod. "Begin," I said quietly. What followed was a ballet of mechanical precision. Each operator knew exactly which vehicle to target first. They worked in coordinated pairs, one photographing and documenting while the other prepared the towing equipment. The hydraulic whine of lifts and the scrape of metal on asphalt became rhythmic, almost hypnotic. The first vehicle, a black BMW SUV, was secured and rolling away within 7 minutes. A white Lexus followed, then a red Mercedes sports car. The team worked efficiently, moving from one section of the lot to another in a predetermined pattern. No alarms sounded. The modern luxury vehicles were designed to detect break-ins, not the smooth professional lifting of a tow truck. One by one, they were secured and departed to the impound lot across town. Dave remained on site, coordinating the operation and ensuring all documentation was properly completed. Within 90 minutes, the scene had transformed completely. 27 vehicles were secured and en route to the impound lot. I stood alone in my now empty parking area, the silence almost disorienting after the activity. The morning sun had burned away most of the fog, revealing the empty asphalt where entitled trespassers had parked for years. The first HOA resident arrived at 8:15 a.m. A woman in designer athletic wear approached the spot where her BMW should have been. Her confusion was evident as she circled the empty space, checking to ensure she had not misremembered her parking location. When she finally noticed the towing sign, her expression morphed from confusion to horror, then quickly to fury. She spun toward me as I stood observing from the warehouse entrance. Recognition dawned on her face. She had been part of the group that had confronted me days earlier. "You cannot do this," she screamed, her voice echoing across the empty lot. Her trembling fingers were already dialing a number on her phone. "This is illegal. Where is my car?" I pointed silently to the sign detailing the towing company information, an impound lot address. Within 30 minutes, more residents began arriving, each experiencing the same progression of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and rage. Word spread quickly through phone calls and text messages. By 9:30 a.m., my warehouse was surrounded by outraged owners demanding answers, threatening lawsuits, calling police. 2 patrol cars arrived, officers stepping carefully into the emotionally charged scene. I provided them with all relevant documentation, property deeds, the formal notice sent to the HOA, photographs of the warning signs, and the records of each towing operation. After reviewing the materials, the senior officer addressed the growing crowd. "This appears to be a civil matter between a property owner and unauthorized vehicles," he announced. The proper notifications and procedures were followed for removal of trespassing vehicles. If you wish to retrieve your vehicles, you will need to contact the impound lot listed on these signs. His words only inflamed the crowd further. One man in a business suit jabbed his finger toward me, his face purple with rage. "Do you have any idea who I am?" he demanded. "I will own this entire property when my lawyers finish with you." A woman pushed forward, designer sunglasses perched on her head. "My husband is a judge. This harassment will not stand." Their threats washed over me without effect. Every action I had taken was legal, documented, and justified. Years of entitlement had convinced these people that rules applied to others, not to them. The true moment of reckoning came at 10:45 a.m. when a black town car with tinted windows pulled into the now empty lot. Ms. Hartwell emerged from the back seat, her face contorted with fury. Her driver remained by the vehicle as she stalked toward me, finger pointing accusingly. "You have made a catastrophic mistake," she seethed, her voice low and dangerous. "The board is convening an emergency meeting right now. Your business here is finished." I maintained my composure, meeting her gaze steadily. Every vehicle was illegally parked on private property despite clear warning signs and formal notification. The law is quite clear on this matter. This is not about the law, she hissed. This is about community. You have just made enemies of the most influential people in this county. As she turned to address the gathered residents, promising swift action and retribution, I felt a strange sense of calm. The threats that had seemed so intimidating during our first meeting now rang hollow. I had reclaimed what was rightfully mine through legal and proper channels. Their anger could not change that fundamental reality. Throughout the day, the scene repeated with new arrivals discovering their missing vehicles. Police were called 3 more times, each visit ending with the same conclusion. I had acted within my rights as a property owner. By evening, the lot remained empty, the only vehicles present being mine and those of legitimate visitors to my warehouse. That night, as I locked up the building, I surveyed the empty parking area with satisfaction. For the first time since inheriting the property, it was truly and completely mine. The aftermath of towing day unfolded exactly as I had anticipated, a storm of complaints, threats, and attempted retaliation. My voicemail filled with messages ranging from tearful pleas to explicit threats. "My daughter was late for her college interview because of you," one woman sobbed. "You will pay for what you have done," growled another caller who did not identify himself. I forwarded all threatening messages to my attorney and the police, creating a documented trail of harassment. Meanwhile, the financial reality of the situation was hitting the vehicle owners hard. The impound lot charges accumulated by the hour, $275 base fee plus $75 daily storage. Owners needed to present proof of registration and identity to reclaim their vehicles. Processes I had ensured were fully documented and lawful. Some residents attempted to claim theft or illegal towing, but the impound lot owner, a veteran in the business, had handled such situations before. He simply produced the signed documentation and photographs of each vehicle parked illegally on clearly marked private property. Payment in full was required before any vehicle would be released. 3 days after the towing operation, I received an unexpected delivery, a bottle of champagne with a card reading, "Finally someone stood up to them." It came from Marco, the auto parts store owner next door. He was not the only one. 2 other neighboring business owners sent congratulatory notes. One stopped by personally to shake my hand. "That HOA has been overstepping their boundaries for years," the hardware store owner told me, genuine admiration in his voice. "Nobody had the courage to challenge them until now." The local newspaper ran a small story about the incident, framing it as "property rights dispute leads to mass towing." While the article maintained journalistic neutrality, the online comments section revealed the community was divided. HOA members expressing outrage, while many others cheered what they saw as deserved consequences for entitlement. The HOA attempted various pressure tactics in the following weeks. Suddenly, city inspectors appeared at my warehouse, checking for code violations. My attorney had anticipated this move and had already conducted a thorough inspection, addressing any potential issues before they could be exploited. The inspectors left empty-handed. Anonymous 1-star reviews began appearing online for a business I had not even launched yet. Potential suppliers received calls questioning my reliability. Each attack was documented and added to our growing file of harassment evidence. The HOA's legal threats proved equally ineffective. Their claim of adverse possession was laughable. My grandfather had explicitly denied permission repeatedly. Documentation existed proving they knew they did not have rights to the property, and they had not used the property openly and continuously for the statutory period required. After 3 weeks of failed intimidation, the tone changed dramatically. My attorney received a call from the HOA's lawyer requesting a meeting to discuss an amicable resolution. Ms. Hartwell requested that I attend personally. The meeting took place at my attorney's office. Ms. Hartwell arrived with 2 board members and their legal counsel, their earlier arrogance notably absent. Across the negotiating table, she maintained rigid professionalism. "We would like to discuss a formal leasing arrangement," she said stiffly, avoiding direct eye contact. "Our residents have relied on that parking area for convenience, and we are prepared to offer fair compensation for usage rights." The contract they proposed was insultingly low, $1,000 monthly for unlimited access to my entire parking area. My attorney responded with our counteroffer: triple the market rate with explicit provisions against future encroachment, a substantial security deposit, and a formal public acknowledgement that they had previously used the property without permission. The negotiation continued for several days. Ultimately, I declined their final offer. The warehouse now houses my own growing logistics business, its parking area reserved exclusively for my employees and business vehicles. The "No HOA Parking" signs remain prominently displayed, freshly painted and well-maintained. 6 months later, my business is thriving. The HOA constructed a small parking structure within their own boundaries to address their parking shortage, something they could have done years ago, instead of exploiting my grandfather's property. Ms. Hartwell resigned from the board shortly after our confrontation, though I doubt she accepted responsibility for the costly outcome of her actions. Marco and the other business owners have become valuable allies and friends. Together, we formed a small business association that supports each other against unreasonable demands from any quarter. Sometimes justice requires more than passive acceptance of wrong. Sometimes it requires taking a firm stand against those who mistake kindness for weakness and rules for suggestions. My grandfather taught me through his life that principles matter. I hope he would be proud of how I protected what he built. The "No HOA Parking" signs remain prominently displayed on my property, not out of spite, but as a reminder that rights come with responsibilities, and that true community is built on mutual respect, not exploitation and entitlement.